The woman in this photo is Barbara Bakeland, a model from the 1960s who slept with her own son in order to turn him straight. When Tony revealed to his parents that he was gay, it didn't exactly align with their morals, so Barbara went out and hired several prostitutes to be with her son. However, this obviously didn't work, so Barbara took it upon herself, saying to her sister, "You know, I could get Tony over his homosexuality if I just took him to bed." Well, she did, and a few years later in 1972, he snapped. Tony stabbed his mother in the heart, killing her instantly, and was sent to a psychiatric hospital to receive therapy. There, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and just a few days after his release, he murdered his grandmother and was taken into custody. But on the day of his prison sentence, Tony Bakeland was found dead in his prison cell, having taken his own life with a plastic bag.
You won't believe what this officer found in this car after stopping this 18-year-old for speeding. On July 2020, when a police officer pulled over 18-year-old Michael Mitchell for speeding, they found a dead body in his trunk. This was only supposed to be a speeding ticket, but then the officer noticed that Michael was acting very strange. Michael did not have a driver's license, and when the officer asked him where he was going, he first said he was going home, and then he changed his answer to he was going to his sister's house. At this point, the officer senses that something is off, so he inspects the car and finds bullet holes on the driver's window. Michael then tells the officer that his brother was involved in an unreported shooting a few days ago. This is when a man pulls up behind the officer and says that the Camaro was reported missing along with the owner of the car. The officer finally decides to search the car and opens the trunk and finds the body of 23-year-old Michael Robinson Jr. Michael then admits that him and his friend Cameron Powell murdered the victim before stealing his car. They then put his body in his own trunk, and Michael was on his way to get rid of it. Now, both Michael and Cameron have been charged with second-degree murder.
Normal-looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 28. While this appears to be a book with typical wear and tear, the damage at the bottom is from a bullet hole. The math book belongs to 10-year-old Uzziah Garcia, who along with 18 other students died in the Robb Elementary School shooting that occurred just a few months ago. This mirror selfie shows Giovanni Bezerra, a Brazilian anesthetist, who was arrested after assaulting a pregnant woman during her C-section. He heavily sedated her and placed his private part in her mouth for 10 minutes, and is seen in a hidden camera wiping her face with gauze after he was done. This photo shows a group of US airmen who were taken as prisoners of war by Japanese soldiers in 1945. 8 of the 11 men were dissected while they were still alive, and the 3 others were placed in custody. This photo shows Michael and Susan Kuhnhausen after being married for 18 years. In 2006, Michael hired a hitman to kill his wife. However, Susan choked the man with her bare hand, saying, "Tell me who sent you here, and I'll call you an ambulance."
This is a good reminder to double check every single nook and cranny in your house. Because in 2019, this couple came home after a week-long vacation to see that there was a stranger living in their home. And he had most likely been living there while they were also in the house. Also, if you like these kinds of stories, you'll like tonight's episode. Upon arriving home after a week away, Josh Campbell tried the front door of his house, but there was a stranger on the inside pulling it closed. That stranger was 26-year-old Ezekiel Zayas, and yes, this is a video he left on their personal computers. The two were able to call the police and eventually get him out of the house, but that's when they saw all of the terrifying stuff he had been up to in the home. He also left them videos on their computers that included incredibly personal information that they had only shared with each other, meaning that he had been listening to their conversations. But the worst part was the knives. Ezekiel had left notes in the house about surgeries that he wanted to perform on the family, like a hand transplant. And when the couple went into their bedroom, they saw that there were knives and other utensils all around the bed. It seemed like he was preparing to do some sort of operation on them. Frogging stories are absolutely terrifying, and I don't want to give too much away, but you might be spooked by tonight's episode.
Imagine spending 18 years in prison for something you never did. In 1995, Daniel Villegas was only 18 years old when he was wrongfully convicted of a double homicide. It all happened in 1993 when 2 teens were walking home from a party when a car came up behind them and shot them and killed both of them. Daniel was brought in for questioning, and the detectives threatened to beat him and give him the death penalty if he refused to confess. Keep in mind that Daniel was only 16 years old at the time, so he was easily manipulated. arrested. He was also coerced to sign a confession that was prepared by the detectives. After he realized what he'd done, he tried to withdraw his confession, but at that point, it was too late. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison until 2018. This is the moment his case was acquitted and he became a free man at the age of 38.
If the defendant will please stand.
This is the moment that Villegas will find out if he'll go home with his family or be sent back to prison to serve his life sentence.
The state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. Verdict form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
I'm Ariana Grande's husband, and I died of a fentanyl overdose. Known to the world as Mac Miller, I was an esteemed American rapper and music producer. My life took a heart-wrenching turn on September 7th, 2018. At the tender age of 26, I faced my darkest hour and met an untimely end due to an inadvertent toxic substance overdose. The news of my demise sent ripples of grief through my followers, those dear to me and the entire music realm. My musical journey boasts of landmarks like my albums Swimming and The Divine Feminine, both of which garnered applause and raked in countless streams. My battles with addiction weren't hidden. I channeled them into my tunes, making them a canvas of raw emotion and self-reflection. Despite my relentless fight against these haunting shadows, they ultimately overpowered me. My passing spotlighted the harrowing grasp of addiction and underscored the paramountcy of mental well-being and backing for those ensnared in similar snares. I remain Mac Miller, a gifted maestro silenced too soon by addiction's cruel grip. May my melodies forever echo and inspire, and may we unite in fostering a world where mental wellness and undying support stand unwavering, precluding such heartbreaks in the future.
These adoptive parents have been arrested after locking children in a shed. In West Virginia this week, Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather were arrested. Police were called to a house in Sissonville around 5:45 p.m. on the 2nd of October. This was after a member of the public spotted a man open a shed and speak to two children inside and then lock the door on the way out. Police arrived at the property and forced entry into the shed and found a female and a male. The captive children had no access to running water and no toilet facilities. There was also no food, beds, or chairs. The two children told police they had no way to exit the shed, and they're believed to be siblings. The children, aged 16 and 14, told police this is apparently a common occurrence. They stated that they'd been given food at 6 a.m. that day and then locked up. Disturbingly, there was also another child in the main property. This child was approximately 5 to 6 years old. The child was reportedly sitting alone on the floor of the loft crying. The child was close to the railing of an approximately 15-foot drop. Police forced entry into the building and rescued the child. Now, when police arrived and while this was all going on, there was no adults at the property. The adoptive parents got home between 8:30 p.m. and 9:45 p.m. Jeannie told the police when questioned that the children in the shed like it. The two adults pictured here were arrested for gross child neglect, creating a substantial risk of injury.
I endured one of the most harrowing fraternity initiations in U.S. history. The ordeal I went through is beyond nightmarish. My name? Stone Foltz. Here's the tale that haunts me. In 2021 spring, I was attending Bowling Green State University and chose to join the Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. I meshed well with many of the members and felt it was the perfect place for me to bond with fellow students. On March 4th, 2021, I went to the frat house, eager to discover who'd be mentoring me. A role referred to as a big in frat culture. Myself and the other initiatees were herded into a basement with deafening music. Suddenly, we were blindfolded and handed a large bottle of liquor. The expectation was clear: down it all. Though I had anticipated something of this sort, being a light drinker, this filled me with dread. In my anxiety to finish, I gulped down the entire bottle in just under 20 minutes. Soon after, a sickening haze enveloped me. I started vomiting, and subsequently, 2 members escorted me back. Arriving at my dorm, they carelessly left me unconscious on a couch. Shortly after, my roommate found me in that state and dialed 911, even trying CPR, but it was all in vain. Medics prolonged my life just enough for organ donation, but my life was irretrievably lost. Out of the 6 fraternity members charged, only 3 faced jail, serving less than a month. My grieving family took legal action against the fraternity and the university, receiving a settlement of over $7 million. Stay tuned for more harrowing tales.
A man is charged with murder after joking that his ex would end up like Gabby Petito. 26-year-old Madeline Kingsbury from Minnesota was found dead in June. She was a mother of 2 and dropped her children off at daycare on March the 31st, shortly before going missing under suspicious circumstances. She was tragically discovered dead on June the 7th in a wooded area in Fillmore County. At the time she went missing, her ex-boyfriend, 29-year-old Adam Fravel, denied any involvement. He stated, "I want the mother of my 5-year-old and 2-year-old to be found and brought home safely. I want that more than anything." However, behind the scenes, things had not been as they seemed. The pair were newly separated and were in the process of moving out of their home together. They had apparently had an on-off relationship. Madeline's body was discovered near a rural property owned by Adam's parents. She was wrapped in a grey fitted sheet which had apparently come from the home that they shared together. He was arrested the same day that Madeline's remains were found. When being arrested by police, Adam unnervingly mentioned Gabby Petito multiple times. Police state that he admitted to being infatuated with the Gabby Petito case. He also admitted that he made a statement to Madeline about her ending up like Gabby. For those that don't know the Gabby Petito case, she was a 22-year-old girl who was strangled to death by her fiancé back in 2021. Police state that Adam claimed he was trying to make a joke. Texts were also found between the pair in 2021, and in one text, Madeline references a physical altercation they had. She wrote, "You know I'm not really okay with or over the fact that you put your hand around my neck and pushed me down in front of the kids earlier." Adam is charged with her murder and could face life in prison.
Did this woman solve her own murder from beyond the grave? On February 21st, 1977, Teresita Bassa had just finished a day's work at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, and she returned home to her apartment. Later that evening, Teresita's neighbours smelled smoke coming from her apartment, and they called 911. When firefighters entered the apartment, they found a mattress on the living room floor engulfed in flames. Underneath that mattress was Teresita's body, burning and with a knife sticking out of her chest. Due to the fire, most of the evidence, including fingerprints, had been completely destroyed, but police did find a note in Teresita's diary that said, "Get theatre tickets for AS," and then the case went completely cold. Around 6 months later, the lead investigator on the case got a call from Evanston Police, saying that they'd spoken to a man named Dr. Jose Chua, and he claimed that he had information about the murder of Teresita, and that this information had come from Teresita herself. Dr. Chua said that his wife Remy had worked with Teresita at the hospital, and that on 3 separate occasions she'd become possessed by Teresita. He said that during these episodes she would be in a trance-like state, and she would be speaking in Teresita's native tongue. He claimed that the first thing Remy had said was, "Doctor, I need your help. The man that murdered me is still at large. I am Teresita Bassa." She then told Jose that she'd been murdered by a man named Alan Showery, who was repairing her TV but then stabbed her and stole her jewellery. Detective Joseph Stachula noticed that Alan Showery had the same initials that they'd found noted in Teresita's diary. Apparently, Alan Showery was actually known to Remy and Teresita, as he too worked at the hospital, and Teresita had been paying him generously to do odd jobs around the apartment. Police decided to pay Alan a visit, and they spoke to his girlfriend Yanka, who was wearing this jewellery. It belonged to Teresita, and she said that Alan had given it to her as a Christmas present. Alan was arrested, and at first he did actually confess to the murder, but later retracted this, saying that police had forced a confession after saying that they would arrest Yanka, who was pregnant with his baby. A judge decided that the trial did need to go ahead, and surprisingly, while awaiting trial, Alan again confessed to the murder. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, but he actually served just 4 and was released on parole.
Jin Bop, the popular YouTuber who played games online, is a convicted pedophile, and this story is disturbing. So this is Starlet Jin Zhao. He was born in 1992. He's 30 years old now. And at the time of his arrest, he had over 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. So to all of the young people that watch Jin Bop's videos, he was this funny guy. He played a large variety of games, but he mainly focused on Minecraft and Inside. And like I said before, his channel was really popular amongst young people. In 2015, he would receive his 100,000 subscriber plaque. But in 2016, as his channel was still growing rapidly, the disturbing truth behind Jin Bop would be brought to light. So in August of 2016, while he was at the Detroit airport, Jin Bop was arrested by federal authorities. For months, he had been communicating with a minor in another state. Now, this young girl had actually started off by creating channel artwork for Jin Bop and helping him run some of the things on his channel. But as time went on, he decided that he wanted to target this young girl and lure her in for some of his gratification. So at first their relationship seemed platonic, but then the young girl's parents noticed that she was wearing a locket with his initials on it. And she was also going out and buying lingerie that she never really bought before. When the young girl's parents started looking into her Skype conversations and listening in, they heard some disturbing things. In one conversation that the girl's parents overheard and recorded, Jin Bop can be heard giving the girl grooming advice for her private areas. He can also be heard saying, "Yeah, I know you're 14 years old." And in the same call, he asks her to strip. And at that point, the FBI got involved, and some of the calls that they recorded between this girl and Jin Bop were absolutely disturbing. I cannot talk about some of those details here on TikTok. He was eventually, though, like I said, arrested and sentenced to prison time. Sadly, I think he's actually getting out of prison this year already. And at the time that he was arrested, he was actually heading to the airport, going on a flight to go meet this young girl in person. That was when the agents decided enough's enough. We don't know what this guy's going to do if he gets there, so they swept in and arrested him. Shockingly, though, his channel is still up and running on YouTube. You can still go watch his videos. Now, I know a lot of people who have had their channels deleted on YouTube for very, very innocuous things. I've actually had my own issues with YouTube, and I know that it is just absolutely crazy that they are allowing this convicted pedophile to still have a YouTube channel. I mean, this is just shocking and hard to believe. So if you see this guy's channel, be sure to go report it because it's owned by a convicted pedophile.
If you're an American Horror Story fan, then you'll have seen this character before. But do you know the real story of Lobster Boy? Grady Stiles Jr. was an American freak show performer turned cold-blooded killer, and he quite literally got away with murder. Grady was born in June 1937 with a genetic condition called ectrodactyly, which meant that his fingers and toes were fused to form claw-like hands and feet. His legs were also deformed, meaning that he did have to use a wheelchair, but he had incredible upper body strength that would allow him to propel himself across the floor. He often performed under the stage name Lobster Boy at the family's travelling carnival, and it was there that he met his wife Mary Teresa, who was another carnival worker that had run away from home and joined the business. Mary and Grady had two daughters, Donna and Kathy. Kathy had the same condition as Grady and of course joined the family business. But Grady soon began drinking heavily, and this is where things took a dark turn for the family. On one particular day when he'd been drinking, he propelled himself across the floor and launched himself at Mary, knocking her to the ground and almost choking her to death. He then kicked Mary out. Mary remarried fellow carnival worker Harry Glenn Newman, who had the stage name The Smallest Man in the World, and she had a son with him who was also called Harry Newman. Grady also remarried and had a son who he named Grady III. He was also born with ectrodactyly, and he joined the family business alongside Grady and his sister Kathy. Grady was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day by this point, and when his teenage daughter fell in love with the young man, Grady did not approve. He often threatened to kill Donna's partner, and when she announced that they were getting married, it tipped Grady over the edge. The night before the wedding, Grady asked his future son-in-law to come to his trailer, and when he arrived, he shot him. Donna heard the gunshot, and she arrived at the trailer. She cradled her dying fiancé, while her father looked at her, laughed, and said, "I told you I'd kill him." Grady's murder trial was a complete media circus. He openly admitted to the murder, but said that he wouldn't go to prison because there was nowhere that was equipped to deal with an inmate with his condition. And he was right. He was let off with 15 years probation. Eventually, his wife left, and shockingly, his first wife, Mary Teresa, came back. He often told his family while in the thick of an alcohol-fueled rage that he got away with murder once and he could do it again. Eventually, Mary decided that she'd had enough. She was terrified for her family's life and fully believed that Grady would kill them, but not if they killed him first. In 1992, Mary, along with her son Harry Jr., approached a fellow carnival worker who was said to have ties to gang members. They paid Chris Wyant $1,500 to murder Grady, and while he was sat in his trailer watching TV, Chris entered and shot him in the back of the head. This time, however, nobody got away with murder. When police questioned Harry Jr., he caved and told them absolutely everything. Mary was sentenced to 12 years for conspiracy to commit murder, and she was released in the year 2000. Chris received 27 years for second-degree murder, and he was released in 2009. And Harry was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life behind bars. He died in 2014. Grady's funeral was barely attended by anyone, and they couldn't get anybody to act as a pallbearer. He was understandably hated in life and completely alone in death.
The man smiling in this photo was arrested after hunting down and brutalizing pedophiles, earning him the nickname, the Alaskan Avenger. As a kid, Jason Vukovich was sexually and physically abused by his stepfather Larry until he ran away from home at the age of 16. Larry was charged with the abuse of a minor but never served any jail time, and as the years passed, Jason grew haunted by his stepfather. He reached a breaking point in 2016 when he decided to use his state sex offender registry to track down criminals, break into their homes, and beat them with a hammer. In 2018, Jason was sentenced to 28 years in prison and has since come out apologizing for his actions. He says that vigilantes have no place in society and warns that just because your past was taken from you, you shouldn't ruin the future that you have ahead. The woman in this photo is Barbara Bakeland, a model from the 1960s who slept with her own son in order to turn him straight. When Tony revealed to his parents that he was gay, it didn't exactly align with their morals, so Barbara went out and hired several prostitutes to be with her son. However, this obviously didn't work, so Barbara took it upon herself, saying to her sister, "You know, I could get Tony over his homosexuality if I just took him to bed." Well, she did, and a few years later in 1972, he snapped. Tony stabbed his mother in the heart, killing her instantly, and was sent to a psychiatric hospital to receive therapy. There, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and just a few days after his release, he murdered his grandmother and was taken into custody. But on the day of his prison sentence, Tony Bakeland was found dead in his prison cell, having taken his own life with a plastic bag.
Here's a face that's been all over the news lately. Usually you'd see a photo like this with the title murder trial and assume that they're the victim. But not in this case. 32-year-old Lucy Letby has been charged with taking the lives of 7 babies and attempting to take 10 more. She was working as a neonatal nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital from June 2015 to June 2016. And this was the time span in which these infants passed away. She was finally removed from the neonatal unit after a senior doctor realised that she was the only common denominator for all of these children. Lucy Letby has pleaded not guilty on all accounts. So her defence team have said that it's just a coincidence that she was present at the passing of every child. They've also said that the passings were natural and not caused by any human interference. The prosecution, however, have presented evidence stating that the victims' lives were deliberately taken, mainly by injecting air into their circulation. Police also supposedly recovered some major evidence from her home after her arrest in 2018. The evidence was a handwritten note, with one section of it reading the following: "I unalived them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them." Well, I guess, take from that what you will. A case that ended with a shocking twist. On the 19th of February in 2008, 9-year-old Shannon Louise Matthews was reported missing by her mother, Karen. Shannon was last seen at 3:10 outside of her school, only half a mile away from her home. By the time Karen called 999, it was 6:48 p.m. in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, and Shannon still hadn't returned home from school. Within hours of her disappearance, a massive police search began, ultimately involving over 250 officers and 60 detectives. Hundreds of neighbours, friends and family joined Karen Matthews in the search for her daughter. Karen made TV appearances begging the public to help her find Shannon alive. The Sun newspaper even offered a £50,000 reward to anyone who could provide information that helped with the investigation. But after 20 days of endless searching, Shannon was still nowhere to be seen. That was until the 14th of March, 24 days after she was first reported missing. Police had finally located Shannon, and she was alive. For 24 days, she had been hidden in the base of a bed in a flat belonging to a man named Michael Donovan. And Michael Donovan was the uncle of her mum Karen's boyfriend. So it turned out that Shannon's mum Karen was involved in her daughter's kidnapping all along. She had concocted this abduction plan hoping to claim the reward money after her daughter's safe return. Shannon was understandably shaken after this ordeal. She'd spent over 3 weeks restrained inside a bed, regularly being given substances as a means to sedate her. Ultimately, Karen Matthews and Michael Donovan were found guilty of kidnapping and false imprisonment, and obstructing the course of justice. But both have since been released from prison and are living under new identities. Shannon received regular therapy after the incident, later being given a new identity and being placed with a foster family.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
This is 20-month-old baby Isaiah. Now do me a favor. Imagine for a moment that this is your daughter. Would you for any reason ever leave her home alone? I didn't think so. She, however, would. This is her 18-year-old mother, Verfi Cootie. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, and frankly, I do not care. Between the months of October and December of 2019, Verfi had left Isaiah home alone a handful of times, at least 5 times, with the longest period of time being 2 days. So 2 whole days, this baby is home alone to fend for herself. Now, on December 5th, 2019, decided she wanted to go out and celebrate her 18th birthday, even though baby Isaiah had been sick with the flu. Verfi had even canceled plans with the family because of Isaiah having the flu. I guess she was just like, I don't want to take her out because she's sick, which, okay, that's, that makes sense. It probably would be best not to bring the baby out with the flu. Instead of asking someone to watch Isaiah, Verfi goes to celebrate her birthday with her boyfriend, leaving Isaiah in the apartment. Once again, she goes 50 miles to London, and there she lives it up. On the 7th, this is 2 days after leaving Isaiah in the apartment, she was seen at a concert and even asked the DJ to give her a shout out for her birthday. So it would not be until 5, almost 6 days later that Verfi would return to the apartment. So this is when she initially left the apartment on December 5th, 2019, which was a Thursday at 5:40 p.m. This is her returning home on December 11th, 2019, which was a Wednesday at 3:38 p.m. So all this time, Isaiah is just in the apartment by herself. When Verfi gets back into the apartment, she finds Isaiah unresponsive. And this is when she feels like it's a good idea to go on social media and tell her family members that Isaiah is just not doing well. At this time, Isaiah had already passed away. It would be 2.5 hours before Verfi would finally contact emergency services. And that's when they come and take Isaiah to the hospital, where she is pronounced deceased. So her cause of death was a combination of the flu as well as starvation. So just think about this. For exactly 5 days, 21 hours, and 58 minutes, this baby was by herself, sick with the flu, no food, no water, no milk, no one there to change her diapers, which resulted in a really bad diaper rash. Obviously, I know of children that have sat in diapers for even hours at a time and have gotten really bad rashes. So you can just imagine how bad this baby had to suffer. But it doesn't end there. And her mom is obviously arrested, rightfully so. She's a piece of trash. I'm sorry to say it. But in November of 2022, she pleads guilty to manslaughter and receives only 9 years. 9 years in jail for leaving her daughter home while she's out dancing and having a good time 9 years, and this woman gets to live a free life while her baby doesn't get to live her life. I'm sure she will never have to suffer as much as this baby has had to suffer, but I hope that in jail, she feels just a little bit of that. I hope they don't treat her very well in there. And I definitely feel like she deserves more than 9 years.